Monday morning and I'm running on fumes and fresh air, as they say. I did make the effort of doing my lovely walk through the farmer's fields this morning, and there's something so magical about living and working so rurally, because there's just such a sense of the seasons changing. You know, one minute you have these like long swathes of grasses that you're walking through, and then the next day they're bales of hay, and it kind of is very like connecting and grounding. But for whatever reason, I'm just very sleepy possum today, and it's very interesting when you're self-employed, because really I just have myself to hold myself accountable, essentially. And so we're here. I do sometimes err on the side of maybe overworking, and you know, the self-care might slip to the side a little bit, but you know, I felt excited this morning to come in and work. There are a lot of things that I need to do that are potentially, I'll stop fiddling, that are potentially, I think, quite visually boring for you to watch. I'm probably not going to film them. I basically have some email documents to review. I've done a couple of Zoom call interviews for magazines and publications recently, so I need to go through those documents and see how the interview's been transcribed. I'm working on a project with Adobe in America, and so I'm currently scripting all of that out, how that will look, storyboarding. And again, that's just all kind of like Word documents on the computer. It's just kind of like that couple of hours on a Monday morning where I'm just kind of catching up with myself and doing admin. So I'm going to get that done. Then we do have some fun boxes to get into. My MPB delivery arrived, which is another project that I'm working on, but they've kindly loaned me 3 brand new Hasselblad lenses for my Hasselblad baby. So that's really exciting. And also, although my print drop has now ended, my kind of like fun ways of framing when you're not working with a framer, when you just kind of want to like play and do it yourself, have arrived. And as I said, they're quite quirky, but like I really strongly believe that how you frame your work and how you make anything sit, even if it was, you know, a receipt or a photo strip from a photo booth, or family images or wedding photos, as well as art, I think framing has a way of elevating. So we'll have a little look at that later. I also have things to wrap and package and send off, artworks to clients. So there's a lot to do, but this initial part in the morning is probably quite dull. So we'll check back in after I've done the admin. Cameras, lenses, like this is kid in candy shop for me type things. So I currently shoot on the Hasselblad X1D Mark II, and I have the XCD 90 lens, which for me is like a fantastic portraiture lens. And I think that there's just something about Hasselblad technology, Hasselblad glass, that like, it's something to do with the kind of color fidelity, the roundness in the images, like the skin tone quality that I just absolutely adore. But as I said, I'm working on a project with MPB, and they've very kindly loaned me 3 new lenses, so let's get into it. can't even remember what I requested. So we have the XCD 75mm. Because this is a medium format camera, the lenses will sound slightly different, like this specific to Hasselblad. I've then also got the XCD 28mm f4.0, which will actually be like, I think it'll be more versatile than I'm thinking, but obviously like great macro capabilities as well. And then I think the Wicked Wango card is, let's move that out of the way. We have got the Hasselblad XCD 135mm f2.8. I think so much of the time people get very kind of bogged down in like the best camera, the correct camera. And honestly, I've had like such an interesting like photographic journey into my practice. I trained formally in sculpture and painting, and photography was always kind of a hobby. And I think that you can create amazing things with any camera. I've still got film cameras, Polaroid cameras. What I'm filming on right now is a Canon. That's where I get all of my kind of cinematic-y shots and behind the scenes photos and documentation. But I genuinely think that for me throughout my career, there's been a kind of a correct camera for a season or for a reason, or because what I was currently using wasn't the extension of my arm that I needed it to be. So I don't think that there is like a right or wrong camera. I think that each artist, each photographer will have cameras that capture them at different points in their careers that are amazing for making certain things or extending their voice visually. And for me, this is kind of just where I'm at now and how I like exploring the narratives that I want to tell. But I'm really excited to take a little look at these, and I think they'll all be quite different from my current glass. To me, there is something quite sexy about Hasselblad cameras and technology. My camera itself is like a full metal body, and there's just something kind of quite aesthetically beautiful about the camera, as well as it being absolutely amazing. So this is the 135mm. And this one is the 28mm. And then probably closest to what I shoot on now is the 75mm. Wow. Once I've actually tested all of these out, I will kind of, I don't know how I'll do it. I'm not going to suddenly start and like be a tech reviewer, but I think it'll be maybe quite interesting to show maybe like side by sides or differences in kind of how these fit specifically into my practice, because I'm very intrigued to know. I mean, lenses are something that can really kind of, I think, adapt your photographic voice whilst maintaining the same camera. So I'm really excited just to kind of see how maybe this changes the lighting, the shapes that I create, or whether it actually doesn't make that much of a difference. I don't know. But I'm going to go and get my other boxes because I want to get into the frames, and I still need to wrap and pack, and we're in the middle of absolute heat wave in the UK. I don't have air conditioning, and I won't use the word, I'm just very hot, shall we say. So I want to put these somewhere safe and get into the framing. Morning. So you will have seen last night that me and my camera didn't have a group conversation, and because of the heat it felt like it needed some time off, which I just, could have been an email I wasn't aware of. But so I thought I'd filmed quite a lot more than I had, and then by the time I realised what was happening, I think just like the camera, because of the heat, onset of a headache, and I just thought, you know what, I know when to show up, but I also know when to let's wrap it up for the day and fight our battles when we need to. So it's Tuesday morning, back in the studio. I'm going to pick right where I left off with the framing of my 3 prints from my Come Rain or Shine collection. Now they are all 30 by 40 prints on Photo Rag. We have Vicious Circle, Cloud9 and Growing Pains. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting each of them into a much larger 50 by 70 frame, but to make it kind of like cohesive and kind of give them this space to exist in, I'm using really large mounts, and I've made sure that each window of opportunity is 30 by 40, but just slightly bigger so that you're able to see the white border, my signature, and that way it kind of sits very kind of prominently, but also it allows this, as I was saying yesterday, this kind of like playful curation of the work. When I'm working with my like super limited collector's editions on aluminium, they're in oak frames, and like I said last week, I like to pull the colours out and be quite playful with it, because to me it's not a separation. I'm not saying that the frame is the artwork per se, but I'm saying that that is how it will contribute to how the artwork sits within a space. So as these are slightly smaller prints, I kind of wanted to elevate them with a large amount, which I just absolutely love. And as I said, I'm being quite playful with the colouring, with the framing, pulling elements out of the artwork and bringing it into the mounts, into the frames, a little bit of colour drenching, and also picking out metallics from elements within the artwork. So me and the camera are back on talking terms, so we will now begin framing. framing, and some of my shipping prep is now done. As you can see, so for example, with Vicious Circle, we have the barbed wire going throughout the image. And I thought it'd be really fun just to like pull out that stainless steel chrome accent and bring that into the frame. Likewise, I've done that with the others. Sometimes I'll pick a skin tone, sometimes I'll pick the color that has like most of the storytelling thread, bring that out into the frame or into the mount. And I think it's just really fun to play with your framing, and there's so much that you can do yourself if you're not working with a traditional framer. So I'm glad that I've got that done. I will show it styled in a space properly next week. The studio is very much, I would say, in flux at the minute. If you've been here for a long time, you'll know I had a previous studio, and then when my husband and I were moving house, moving rurally and like really committing to being in the countryside, I gave that space up. And then I've had this studio since about February. And whilst I love it, I'm so grateful to have the space, there's just something that doesn't feel quite right yet. In essence, I moved in and had to immediately start working. So it's one of those things where when you start to live and work with a space, you start to see how you really want it to function. One of the things I absolutely hate are the carpet tiles on the floor, and I really I'm itching to rip them up. Luckily, my husband works in flooring, so I'm like, what can we do? I really just want a concrete floor because I'm gonna start painting again after a very long hiatus. But again, if you've been here from back way when in my career, you'll know that at the start, painting and sculpture was all that I did. And I think there's something about coming back to the things that brought you joy as a child that's really uplifting. And I just have such energy to want to paint again. I want to work with ceramics again. And so the space requires some adjustments. It doesn't mean that the photography is going away, but I think that some stuff is actually going to have to go back into storage so that I have more room to do everything else. This is like when my brain starts to relax. It's like, do this, do this, do this. And so here we are. But I think there'll be some future videos where the studio is having quite a transformation, which is very exciting. And I think because the last 5 years has been just such a whirlwind of intense projects and amazing opportunities, my brain over the last few months has had time to kind of step back a little bit and collate the things that are important and intrinsic just within my practice, all projects aside, all client work aside, all commissions aside. What is it that, if no one would ever see it, what would I want to make tomorrow? And that's where my focus is at the moment. Thanks again for joining me on this uncandid version of Claire. If you're new here, thank you for joining. I hope you will consider joining again next week. And yeah, we'll come up with a sign-off. I don't know what the sign-off is yet, but I'll see you soon.